Next on our agenda is a PEPS overview. PEPS folks help us procure engineering services. It is an Austin office, but we have Gail Maria leading our section. I want to tell you a little bit about Gail. Gail has worked in Houston for a long time and now is leading the PEPS office, but her operation is seamlessly integrated with everything the Houston district does. We are so thankful to have her leadership. She's got a lot of experience. She's got a lot of practical ability to deal with things. She's very focused. She keeps things well organized. And Gail, we couldn't do it without you. We are so glad to have you as a partner. Also, she's hired some of our folks from Houston to help her run her operation, and we're okay with that. It's just, when you're dealing with something this complex, it's always good to have a work family together. Gail, please come forward. Okay, you can use this. Now that's mine, and this.
I have to use that?
Wherever you want.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
No? Really? No? No?
This is mine.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Now I have to multitask. Hold the mic, progress through my slides, and talk. That's not too good. And walk. So anyway, I'm so happy that you all are here today. I hope that the information I provide to you will be of benefit to you. So let's just move on. Basically, PEPS, as Quincy mentioned, is charged with procuring the most qualified professionals or consultants to deliver an effective transportation solutions for Texas. That's our primary goal. We have a mission statement that we work with our TxDOT customers and external partners to procure the most qualified consultants to deliver the effective solutions. Our goals are to deliver the right projects. We're to focus on the customer. We need to foster stewardship relationships. We need to have performance, a strong performance, so that we preserve our assets, we promote safety, and the value of our employees. So basically, to sum it all up, our values are people, accountability, trust, and most importantly, honesty. This is the map of PEPS. We have 8 service centers, basically. There's one in Fort Worth, one in Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and then there's also a pointer right here, this black box here, that's the Divisions Service Center. If you notice, all the counties that are in a bluish black, those are actually under the Central Division. So there's 19 districts that are under that Central Division. Also, recently, we have what we call a new group called the Invoice Center. And let me tell you, my staff is relieved at the creation of the Invoice Center, because it is going to be a group that's all they do is make sure that you're getting paid. And my group will be no longer, or any of the other service centers will no longer be supporting the invoice function. Now true, it's going to be a gradual movement of invoices, and we will be in touch with you all to let you know what the proper invoice box will be. We're going to set up a mechanism that if you do still send to us, that it will bounce to the Invoice Center in Austin, because they are in Austin. However, a lot of their employees are virtual. So that we're really anxious about that. Houston's invoices are probably going to be moving around the end of this month to mid-May. Okay. Then organizationally, we have our leader, Martin Roden, whom many of you know. His vision has really led us in, I think, a great direction. There's always more room for improvement and change, but certainly without his leadership, we wouldn't be where we are today. And then, as I mentioned, we've got the service centers, the invoice center. Then Dan Neal Center of Excellence. Actually, he came in from Austin today to be available if you have any questions. He basically helps with training and getting everything solidified for our contracts, for the procurement process, so he keeps us on the straight and narrow. Then we have our business opportunities group, where the invoice center is going to be kind of functioning under Roy for a while. Okay, let's move on to our engineering contract types. We actually procure a great number of engineering contract types. As you can see, it is amazing the types of contracts that we actually do procure. In fact, I just had one of my procurement engineers procure a ferry vessel contract. So we have unique situations. However, if you notice the pink, there's 3 particular contract disciplines that are our primary focus. And that is construction engineering inspection, PS&E, and schematic and environmental. Now, if you're in the Dallas district, for instance, you would be more inclined to see schematic, environmental, and PS&E. Houston district prefers to do the schematic and environmental as a separate discipline, and I believe that that's a really good philosophy because you don't have the problem of moving from the environmental and having to delay the design, you know, and the conflicts of interest that could crop up and everything without having the entire environmental document and process completed. So we prefer the vehicle of just a schematic and environmental. And of course, in this fiscal year, the grand total that we were going to be procuring is $1.3 million. Again, notice the areas of CEI, PS&E, and schematic and environmental. And this is statewide, so you see that that's where the bulk of the money is. Pardon? I'm sorry, if I said million, I meant billion. That makes a big difference. Yeah, 1.3 billion, I'm sorry. And a lot of the other disciplines that are still hefty, but not quite like the 3 big elephants in the room. Okay, moving forward, what does it look like for our annual lettings? Well, with Proposition 7, we're going to be having an average letting of $6.5 billion to $7 billion between 2017 and 2025. And that is purely because of Prop 7. So you can see that curve and how that's pushing everything. Well, what does that mean? That means we need help. Now, I wanted to show you the 2018 Procurement Plan. This is out on the website, the TxDOT website, under the projected contracts list. This is Houston's. I didn't show you the rest of the state because I felt like this focus today was for Houston. Now in Wave 3, which by the way we're kicking off on May 3rd, we have 3 procurements going on. We have the PS&E on I-35. It's 1 procurement, but 5 contracts, SD contracts, will be selected from that 1 procurement. Okay? Then we have the federal process that we're going to be doing for Pat Henry in his schematic and environmental. That's State Highway 35 from Belfort to Alvin. This is a different part of the corridor. The PS&E is already environmentally cleared. This is a new piece. And so we will be handling that as an SD, but it will be federal, which is a very key point to remember because that means DBE goal as opposed to the PS&E, which will be hub goal. And then the third one is our very much needed support of surveying. We've got, with a lot of these jobs that are being done in-house and a lot of the I-45 NHIP job, we need a lot of surveying support. So we will be going out for actually a record number of contracts for Houston this time, 15 at $2 million each. Then in wave 4, this was not on the agenda, but it cropped up about three weeks ago. We got another CEI, federal. It's going to be an SD. It's with it's for those of you that are interested in the project, you can talk to Grady Mapes. No? Adam. Sorry. Between Adam and Grady, I thought Grady did it. Okay, Adam Gallen, the Montgomery area office, is the area engineer, and he can discuss with you the actual project. A lot of times, Houston just gives me the project. They don't necessarily give me the details of what is going on in the project. So if you need details, usually you need to reach out to whoever is going to be involved with the procurement. And though Adam, since it's August 2018, it's late into the summer, you have the opportunity to talk to Adam right now. Yes, sir.
What does that mean?
Specific deliverable. An ID is indefinite deliverable. So that's a very important project that just cropped up as an emergency. Say Highway 242. Oops. Now, 2019. Question. Because basically we're working on the 2019 procurement plan. But based on historical information from Houston over the years that I've worked with them, I would pretty much say it's going to be a lot of CEI, maybe some PS&E, definitely, possibly some scheduling that we might need. On-system, off-system bridge, we're pretty well taken care of. Possibly some schematic and environmental. But more importantly, my umbrella has kind of grown to cover more than just Houston District. Recently, when Varuna Singh's Strategic Projects Office rolled under Houston District, that is now going to be, I will be supporting him in his procurements as well, except for the design build. That will be done out of division. But any GEC that he may have, or IE contracts, independent engineering contracts, or the OVT, oversight testing contracts, we will be handling that on behalf of Varuna. So I know for sure there's going to probably be at least one, maybe two in that 2019 plan. But anyway, the procurement plan, we will be reaching out to Houston. Actually, this Friday, I will be sending. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Gail, did you notice any traffic engineering on that for year 2019?
Well, I know that they just sat, Barbara Russell sitting on a CST that they just selected
Right.
traffic engineering. I'm not sure about traffic signal timing. I mean, I think he selected last year, so I'm not sure that he would need anything.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, with regard to the 2019 procurement plan, we will be in contact with the district Friday, sending out the spreadsheet, and with them requesting that they populate their procurement needs by wave. And hopefully, we will have that exercise done and complete, and over to PEPS, back to PEPS, so that we can review it, work with the district to see if everything is where it needs to be as far as the wave planning. And then we basically go to our steering committee, they approve it, That's usually in July. And then in August, the 2019 procurement plan will be posted for all to see. But just wanted to give you a heads up, there are some disciplines that we probably will expect to see. As far as the procurement process itself, there's several different delivery methods that we have. The core selection processes are accelerated, streamlined without interview, and streamlined with interview. An example of an accelerated would be surveying or geotechnical. We can do most of the streamlined or ID contracts, so you can do them with or without interviews. Comprehensive is your specific deliverable contract that's state funded. And then, of course, we have federal management, we have emergency, and we also have urgent and critical. We have had a case to use emergency, but it's not usually used. But it is there for us if we need it. The federal process. There was a Texas administrative rule change that effective fiscal year 2018, Wave 3, and that Wave 3, as I mentioned, starts May 3rd with the CST kickoff. Basically, we're moving from a 3-step process, which was the SOQ, proposal, and interview. We're moving to a 2-step process, which is proposal and interview. Quite a bit simpler, much more streamlined. We are still subject to the 935 in the TAC, Texas Administrative Code, which is an engineering or design-related service contract directly related to highway construction project and reimbursed with federal aid highway program funds. So federal is a little stricter with regard to engineering in that you have to be administratively qualified for the federal process. However, what we did get to do is streamline the process even more, and if we want to do a federal process where we select strictly from the proposal, kind of like an accelerated, except now you're using a proposal, then the provider or successful provider would be selected based on the proposal scores. So that's a new vehicle that we have. Another one is basically the normal two basic steps. We're going to publish the RFP. You will respond with a proposal. Okay? The proposal will be scored. We will shortlist from the proposal. Then we will go to the interview with the shortlisted providers. And the score from the interview only will determine who the successful candidates are. And as I said, for the SD or ID contracts, the process is the same. The major difference with a specific deliverable versus an ID is basically a specific deliverable. You know at the time that the RFP comes out, you have a very detailed scope. And you don't know the level of effort, but the engineer or depending upon the discipline, the team has already developed a level of effort that they believe is fair and reasonable. But basically the contract requires more than just the negotiation of the rates. It requires negotiation of rates, level of effort, and most importantly, scope. That's the first thing. If you don't have a good scope, then everything's going to go downhill from there. So we must have a meeting of the minds with regard to the scope.
Gail, quick question.
Yes.
I might have missed it. What percentage of going into FY19 do you expect to do the basic 1-step and then a
We don't really know at this point. It's too early to tell. state-funded accelerated process. Okay, that's one of our state-funded processes. And accelerated we use, as I said, for surveying, geotechnical. It's for contracts not subject to the other processes. Most of the time, a lot of our indefinite deliverable that we consider relatively low risk are procured in this manner. However, you could actually do an SD for less than $1 million, which I don't think we're capable of doing that here in Houston. But yes, if you have an SD less than $1 million, we could also handle it under the accelerated process with no interview here. Basic step is for this one is we publish the RFQ. You provide us an SOQ, which is scored, and the successful candidates are selected from the highest scoring SOQ. This procedure was designed for the less complex and lower risk services. There's a standardized set of core ID contracts. Typically the value is $2 million or less. ID contracts just require the negotiation of rates. So it's a fast process. We can get you under contract a lot faster with the ID process as opposed to an accelerated versus going to the specific deliverable. Okay, state-funded, streamlined process. These are for ID contracts with higher risk services based on project costs. We usually bundle them into a number of contracts or types of services. With the interview phase, because we can do two things. We can do it with an interview or without an interview. With the interview phase, we would publish the RFQ, you would submit us the SOQ, we would score the SOQ, shortlist from the SOQ, and then move on to select based on the scores from the interview only. Whereas the second process, we are just going to select from the scores of the SOQ. As I said, this is for standard or non-standard ID contracts. We have had situations where we've gone above the typical $2 million. We will do interviews if we feel that an additional step requiring a little bit more rigor and knowledge and is necessary. In fact, as a matter of fact, we've done schematic and environmental ID contracts using the streamlined with interview process. Yes, it's most of the time. Sometimes we kind of guide the district, but sometimes we'll actually have the district say, no, I want interviews. For instance, schematic environmental, the supervisor felt that they needed to have the rigor of the interview and not just go with an SOQ. So it is a combo. We provide guidance if they want it, but if they really feel like they want a certain particular phase, then we will accommodate them as long as it's not against any regulations. For instance, we probably wouldn't do, trying to think off the top of my head, a contract that perhaps was more than $5 million. We're not prepared. We are starting to do IDs, I believe, more than $5 million, which is kind of really outside the comfort level, but we've been just forced to be in that position to be able to respond to the district needs. Okay, the comprehensive process. That's where the specific deliverable project comes in, meaning that we know exactly where the project is located. We know exactly what our scope of services are to some degree. Usually what happens is once we select, we find out, well, we need to tighten up the scope. But going into the selection process, we're pretty confident about what is needed from the provider. Now, these SDs are definitely $1 million or more. In fact, in most cases, they're $4 million and above. We're not usually down around $1 million, sometimes maybe $2 million, but it's normally the larger size contracts. There's basic steps to this one, basically 2 basic steps. We post the RFQ, the provider responds using an SOQ, we score the SOQ, then we shortlist from the SOQ, and then we interview and select the top providers. Good example of this is Mark Patterson's I-35 PS&E that he is going to be doing in Wave 3. It's 1 procurement, 5 contracts. He knows his scope. He knows his level of effort. So he's going to be selecting based on the comprehensive process. What's going to happen is when they go to the interview, the top 5 contracts will be awarded. The top firm gets the highest contract, and then they just basically award based on that. Yes, sir.
You meant State Highway 35, not IH 35.
Yes, IH 35 is in Austin. I meant State Highway. Sorry. Okay. This process is utilized most often for your more complicated projects. One of the reasons why we really don't like to use it often, but we are really in a position more and more of using it, like 50% IDs now and 50% SDs, whether they be comprehensive or whether they're federal. And the issue with the SD is that it just takes such a long time to get a provider under contract, because you've got to negotiate the rates, you've got to negotiate the scope, you've got to negotiate the level of effort, and it just takes a while to do all that. So it does take a much longer time frame. As a matter of fact, it takes about 130 to 145 days, and if you've got 5 of them going simultaneously like Mark will have, it'll be even longer. Yes, sir.
I might have missed it, but past performance.
Good question. Where does past performance enter into the picture? Well, it depends. It's in the same location on the process. Basically, we used to wait till we went to the interview phase, if we had an interview phase, to do the past performance scores. We do no longer do that. Past performance scores are included at the SOQ or proposal stage. So anybody moving to an interview, they will not be dinged by their past performance, which we feel like is a good cost savings for the consultant community, because they will not have gone through the effort and then been told at the interview stage, oh, so sorry, your past performance score has just kicked you out of the running for a contract. So anyway, that's an excellent question. So, how do we get started? And am I eligible to do work with TxDOT? Okay. Well, this is a handy-dandy little slide. Raquel, are we going to have the slides made available to them all?
Yes.
So, okay, so
We'll be
this.
able to announce how you get that, and be able to, because you registered, we'll send you the link, and be able to provide you with all of the presentations for that. So we will think about it, yeah. Okay.
Yes, Rich.
Clarification on the federal side, you said we're going to go to proposal, which is very different from what we've been doing and the various questions.
Well, the proposal is going to be question-based also.
And then on the state fund, it's still going to continue with the question phase at the end or section?
Yes, yes, yes. So this slide is an important slide because there's some key pieces of information that can trip you up with regard to potential DQs. The first one, make sure you are registered as a business with the state of Texas. Now, we don't just mean the prime, we mean all the subs. Okay? We've actually changed the cover sheet that goes with the SOQ package to reflect prime and sub providers. That, you remember that little box that you have to check? Well, that's been changed, and that will be coming out in wave 3, reflecting that. The next thing is, if you're an engineering firm, whether you're a prime or a sub, you've got to be registered with the Texas Board of Professional Engineers. The third thing is, you must be pre-certified with TxDOT if those are work categories. Now, even with the new summary of work category changes, there still are a few non-listed work categories, but certainly not 56 like we used to have. So Sargon will be talking about the work categories and the introduction of the new work categories and the impacts to you all. Fourth, you must become administratively qualified with Texas, TxDOT. That means through our PEPS Administrative Qualifications group. Okay? I'll go into, in great detail, administrative qualifications soon, in a few minutes. Fifth, check the TxDOT webpage for listings of projected contracts and pre-RFQ meetings. Because basically, as I said, it's a living document. It's not frozen in time. Because the districts, as money becomes available, suddenly projects move up that they didn't know were going to move up, and we've got to accommodate those procurement needs if they need us to. So keep plugged into that TxDOT webpage. And then, of course, you've got to submit your qualifications in the packet that we need. That includes the cover sheet, the PTC or project team composition form, the SOQ, statement of qualifications, or in the case of the federal, it means the proposal. It will, if you have hub participation, you will need an HSP plan, and SOQ package, PTC, HSP, I think I got it all. Okay. Administrative qualifications. Very important, guys. This leads to DQs, and unfortunately, it can also, if you're a sub, you can also lead to DQs for the prime.
Yeah, so you say what a DQ is?
I'm sorry, disqualification. Something you all don't want to have happen, basically. Okay, what are administrative qualifications? The process by which our department verifies that your firm has an indirect cost rate, or what we often call overhead, that meets department requirements. This report that you're going to submit to our admin qual group must comply with AASHTO's Uniform Audit and Accounting Guide, as well as being a federal acquisition regulation in compliance with their regs as well. So in other words, we often refer to it as the FAR. Now keep in mind, you can demonstrate either by audit or self-certification that you are administratively qualified as an incorporated entity or business segment. So you can do that And there's a prescribed procedure that's on our website as to how you go about doing that. Keep in mind to always look at the Texas Administrative Code. It does change. In particular, Title 43, Part 1, Chapter 9, Subchapter C, and in this particular instance, I'm citing Rule 9.34B and 9.35B, which talks about administrative qualifications. But really, the best place to go is our website, TxDOT's webpage, where you go to business and you go to the architectural engineering, and then you go, and that immediately sends you to the information about administrative qualifications, pre-certs, gives you the projected contract list, it gives you the projected procurement plan, a lot of good information on that website. You must maintain at your administrative qualifications. So what this means is each year, and no later than 60 calendar days prior to June 30th, you need to submit a new CPA audit or self-certification for reanalysis. Notice 60 calendar days. This is in the TAC, people. Please don't wait till the last week before June 30th and have everybody submit. We had 140 firms submit last year. That's ridiculous. It's in the TAC. We are given 60 days to process. So my advice is submit early. Don't wait till the last minute. Maintain your correct insurance requirements. Remember, though it may not be, it's not an issue during the actual selection process for us. It probably comes into effect more at the administrative qualifications part, but it definitely comes into play at the contract stage when we get ready to execute the contract. If you do not have insurance certification up to date on our form, not on the insurance company's accord form, our form, then it will delay signing the contract. And by the way, that also is relevant to the process as the work authorization as you proceed under that contract and continue to do work for us. You've got to maintain that insurance so that if a work authorization is getting ready to be signed and we discover, again, there's no insurance, then it will delay the process of getting it signed until you have current insurance. Some updates for the AQ processing. I wanted to let you know that PEPS AQ Group is no longer accepting reports for 2016. Get ahead of the queue. Don't wait till the week before June 30th to send in your 2017 report or self-certification. As I mentioned earlier, the tax stipulates we have 60 days for processing. This is a very key piece of information because I know a lot of you all like to, once you turn in your AQ for review, your AQ report for review, you want to know what the status is. That AQ list out on our website is updated twice daily, once in the morning and once in the evening. So if you're not in the morning, you might be in the afternoon. Administrative qualification reports are processed on a first-come, first-served basis. No exceptions. Note, the federal safe harbor rate program expired December 31st, 2017. There are some firms that use the safe harbor rate of 110%. What this means is, if you were fortunate enough to get your application in before and was approved before December 31st, 2017, you've got 3 years from that date. And after that, the program is dead. I mean, they're not accepting applications anymore. But look at it from the standpoint, whenever you were issued your safe harbor rate, if you're using that, it's 3 years from the date, I believe, of being issued. That's important to know.
Yeah, quick question.
Yes,
So when
sir.
you say 3 years from the issue, are you talking it's valid through December 31st of 2020? So
If you got it before December 31st, 2017, yes, sir. If you applied, let's say, in the middle of December, and you got an approval letter December 29th, 2017, well, then you have 3 years from that date. If you applied a year before that, you have 3 years from the date that you were accepted then.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. This is important to know. The PTC form, or otherwise known as the Project Team Composition Form, basically, once you put in the firm sequence number, it automatically populates the status of your AQ, or Administrative Qualifications. And there's been situations, particularly in the case of when you have a safe harbor rate, we don't know that you have the safe harbor rate, so it automatically populates with a big red sign. Okay? If you get that, you need to contact PEPS, whichever service center procurement engineer is handling the procurement, and inquire. And what we'll do is we will contact our PEPS admin call group and find out if that safe harbor rate has been approved by TxDOT to utilize. Okay? And then we'll give you instructions on how to work around this issue. In some cases, we've just had the provider just put it in writing, in hard, in ink. There are exemptions to administrative qualifications for contracts, okay? From a standpoint of federal and state-funded contracts, the exemption is any firm performing non-engineering work. A good example of this is public involvement. So what that means is that firm does not have to be administratively qualified. For the federal only, there are no exemptions for engineering firms. Any firm that provides engineering or design-related services must be administratively qualified, and keep this in mind because it's different than the state, by the date you submit your proposal. Okay? So that means it's not, the state is it's the exact opposite. It's not at the proposal date or SOQ date submittal. Now, unless you are eligible to utilize the safe harbor, but this is a key point. If you're going to use the safe harbor indirect cost rate, you need to make sure that your eligibility has been approved by the PEPS Administrative Qualifications Group prior to the closing date of the proposal, okay, being submitted. That's very key. On state-funded contracts, a provider performing a service under standard work category 18.21, and any of these groups below, oh boy, Group 6, bridge inspection, 12, materials inspection and testing, 16 is architecture, 14, geotechnical, and 15 are surveying and mapping. Those are exempt disciplines from being administratively qualified. Yes, Dan?
Just wanted to make sure engineering surveying is considered survey.
Yes, yes. So that would be from the standpoint of the federal contract, surveying is considered an engineering task. Okay, federal only. So that means that surveying is not an exempt category in federal process. They have to have administrative qualifications. Okay, the timing of administrative qualifications. Well, the timing, as I mentioned earlier, depends upon whether it's a federal or state procurement, federal funded. All procurements other than the federal require approved AQ in place or administrative qualifications to be in place at the time of selection. Okay, that could be, if we're doing accelerated, well, that would be at the SOQ scoring and we select. However, if it's a streamlined with an interview, then it would be the selection at the time as we move to the interview, right? Or is it the award? At the time, for the streamlined with interview or comprehensive, the AQs have to be in, approved by,
Federal must be
Yeah.
part of the SOQ.
Yeah.
State, it's in the selection process.
it's in the selection process. So it's not the award, it's prior to the award. So when you get shortlisted, in other words, and go to an interview, in the case of those. Now, again, accelerated, no, that's when you, basically, we score the SOQs and whoever's gets the contract. So, let's see. And I mentioned earlier, but I do want to emphasize it, that beginning with the 2018 Wave 3, instead of the three-step process, which was the SOQ, proposal, and interview, we are now reduced to a two-step process, which is the proposal and the interview, which is really great. And then, as I said earlier, there is a hybrid of that federal where you could do it without an interview, where you would just do the proposal and score from the proposal, and whoever was the high scoring and most qualified would get the contract. Remember, with this, the reduction down to a two-step phase will mean that your administrative qualifications will need to be approved and in place at the time the proposal is submitted to PEPS. Now, this is the federal process. Okay? That's key to remember. Okay, the pre-certification process, it establishes the minimum technical qualifications, remember, minimum, to perform work under the standardized work categories. And I'm going to let my assistant in this afternoon's presentation go into much better detail about the pre-certification process, as well as the summary of changes to the work categories and the fact that you all should be submitting for pre-certification on a number of these categories. Some of the wrap-up, some procurement tips. I always say these: check that all mandatory forms are in your package, keep alert to amendments, ask questions when you have the opportunity, showcase your PM and task leaders, focus on providing challenges, solutions, and lessons learned, present innovative ideas or alternatives, be clear, concise, and technical, use space wisely. It's not for marketing. Answer the question. If there's no conspiracy theories with these questions. We're very clear what we want. If we're not clear, you still have the opportunity to ask a question during the Q&A piece. So, but if we ask for task leaders' experience in 2 projects, that's what we want. We don't want the project manager or the team. We're asking specifically for the task lead. We may give you a scenario, but we'll tell you how to focus your response. Remember, this is really important. It amazes me how many people get DQ'd from this RFQ cover page. Read it, guys. Don't just go check, 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 check. Because there's some key critical information that you as a project manager are certifying to, okay? And we've had cases where firms have been DQ'd because of incorrect information on that cover page. That cover page is important. It's a checklist for you so that we can minimize our DQs. We never thought that it would cause DQs, but it does. And please remember to use your best examples and give credit if a firm is on your team and that they're providing a best example because they're the task lead. Make sure you let us know that it was that firm. Because we've had situations where CST members were familiar with the project and a firm took credit and that firm did not do the work, and it kind of puts a bad taste in the mouth of a selection team member. Additional procurement tips. Originally I had a lot more hub stuff in here, but I figured Mr. Bryant would be covering it. So I went to the important things that, to me, that are important for you to know that could impact you being DQ'd or disqualified. But first of all, you need to read the hub or DBE language in the solicitation carefully. We had a solicitation last time where, because of the uniqueness of the service, we did not have a goal, a hub goal. And because we didn't have a hub goal, all the hub language stuff was taken out. Yet, what happened was, both firms that turned in an SOQ turned in HSPs. And I submitted the HSPs to the hub Office of Civil Rights, the hub group, and they said, well, this is interesting. We thought there was no subcontracting opportunities at all, but according to this HSP, there are. So now we're in danger of not having a zero goal anymore on this particular. I will see when I have to fight the battle next time, but anyway, that's what came out of that, and that was a lessons learned for me. Use the HSP quick checklist to identify which method you will use to complete the HSP. You know, there's 4 methods. That cover page that is on the HSP when you pull it down from the comptroller's website, that first page is the checklist. Read it carefully because it gives you guidance as to how you need to fill out, what pages you need to complete to have an appropriately completed HSP. Okay? And there's the last method, which was very interesting to me, is where if you aren't going to use any subs whatsoever, that you as a firm can self-perform. That's very interesting. The other one, the first one, is also very interesting, where you only use hubs to perform the work, and let's say you still didn't meet the goal, but you only used hubs. That's a valid HSP. That was also enlightening to me. So read that checklist and make sure that you are utilizing the correct method. If you're not sure how to fill out the HSP training is available on the TxDOT website. I'm not the HSP guru. That actually, there's also a lot of information on the comptroller's website as well. Okay, some automatic disqualifications regarding the HSP. You're not using the latest version. That's not coming from PEPS. And I'm not sure necessarily that it's coming from Office of Civil Rights. It's coming from the statute, but Office of Civil Rights is making sure that we implement it correctly. So the most current version right now is February 2017. However, I did hear a rumor, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Bryant, if you're in the room. I heard a rumor that maybe they would be updating that HSP.
We believe that's true.
Okay. So what the words of wisdom for this are, go to the state comptroller's page every time, download the entire form. That doesn't mean that you just slap the first deal as it has to do with, because you're using the same team that you've used on a prior procurement. So you decide, oh, as an engineer, let's do something quick and fast. And you go and you download and you replace the one page that's different and you add it to your old HSP. And guess what, guys? You're going to get disqualified. So please don't do that. Okay, I keep mentioning the state comptroller. This is the website that you need to go to for the hub form, and the HSP, I guess, is what I'm really talking about. And for those of you that don't know, HSP is for hub subcontracting plan. I knew it last night when I was doing my dry run. Okay, another area where you can be disqualified is failure to sign Section 4 of the HSP. No, and by the way, that's the affirmation statement part. We've had cases where the provider has submitted, and not 4 hours later they call and say, oh my God, we forgot to sign the form. Can we come and change them out? No. It is an automatic disqualification. Also, please don't use TBA or TBD in lieu of a percentage. You know, on there you'll have to say, the provider name, say if they're a hub or not a hub, and then it goes all the way over and you say, some firms will say TBD because they don't know, right, you know. Well, you should be able to get a fair idea from the information that we provide that what the percentages are. Do not use TBD or to be announced or to be determined. You need to put an actual percentage there. And by the way, the other thing that we look at is how does that HSP align with your project team composition form? If your percentages are different on your project team composition form than your HSP, you have a problem. So be careful of that. The other thing I wanted to say before we move on to this slide is there's been some changes as far as how we will be monitoring contracts going forward. When you enter into a contract with us, you know that famous Exhibit H1 where you have to list all your sub-providers, the vendors' numbers, and as well as the percentages, or if you've got a specific deliverable, you've got to list the amounts. We will look and make sure that that Exhibit H1 looks like your PTC form. Okay? They've got to align. If they don't, then a new HSP is going to be necessary before we enter into the contract. And you can't add a sub-provider once the contract's been awarded and until after execution. And normally we don't like to add a sub-provider except for the case of where we may have a non-performing sub-provider and you want to basically add some more resources to make sure that you can stay on track. So that's important to know. The other thing is that let's say you, the aspirational goal set by the comptroller office for these comptroller contracts that are state funded is 23.7. Let's say that you have committed through your PTC and HSP for 30% of participation. That means the contract will be drawn up based on your committed goal of 30%. That is the goal that you are expected to meet, not the aspirational goal. That's very important to know. So those were the things I wanted to talk about for HSP. Moving on to networking with TxDOT. As I said, there are 8 service centers statewide for networking opportunities. As far as our service center, you can contact me at any time. My assistant, Sargon Johannesad, at any time. He will, this afternoon, you'll have the pleasure of having his Jerry, you got a question? Yes.
Yes, we're wondering about the self-performance of the, let's say there's a hub and we're a minority, get the contract. What might be self-performance of the company is with us and they want to do the whole job?
We thought for smaller firms, and yet the big firms still came in and went after it. And we asked, well, is there anything we can do about that? And unfortunately, we can't. That we can't do set-asides. And we're talking, as a matter of fact, in PEPS right now, where are we going to move, going forward, you know, how are we going to be able to reach the smaller firms? And it's going to be very interesting because there's several initiatives that we're looking at, but again, that we are kind of hamstrung by the government code. And remember, we have to award based on most qualified, and that's all we're given. And so that's where we have a problem. Now we are going to try to think out the box, think outside the box. Martin Roden is very good at that, and we're trying, and hopefully we can come up with something. But I really don't know how we're going to do it because we are limited with the code.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one way you do that, have individual contracts for specialties.
But we do ID contracts.
There's not that much use.
Well, that's true, but that's Houston.
Houston.
Yeah. Well, then you need to talk to Quincy. That's I don't get their program together. They do.
Is there a incentive, disincentive program for the sub?
No.
Is that against the tax?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
The government code, the state government code.
Yeah, you don't do survey, you don't do HMA.
Right. Years ago we did geotech, but we haven't done it for quite some time. But yes, you're right, Gabe, we do hydraulics and hydrology as a specialization, and those are ID contracts, and as I said, the surveying, and we actually have done materials testing too. But what we did was we used another a group to serve on the selection team. But anyway, any other questions before I turn it over to Quincy? Yes, Edie.
How about limiting number of small businesses as sub on larger contract to the big companies.
Yeah.
I mean, the federal metro also does state projects, and the law rules are the same thing. So they do apply that, why Texas can't do that?
Say that again for,
I'm
wanting Dan to hear you as well.
We can't hear. So better stay on the mic.
Say it on the mic.
Limiting the number of sub-consultants for disciplines for each big contracts. Then they don't, like, if you're a sub-consultant, you can be only on 4 teams.
We did that. She was saying
And
Metro.
Metro does that, and they do use federal money, and it works pretty good. So that way, you reach out other small businesses, and you give opportunity to them as well. It is quality-based selection. It is federal contract.
It's an
And
interesting,
it is working.
it's an interesting idea. We haven't explored that. We'll have to explore that with council. So we'll take the idea back and see if
Office
we
of
can do
General
something. We'll see if that's something available.
I think that was something that we thought about.
I don't know that we can do it, we'll
Yeah.
ask. That's a possibility.
I mean, what I would ask, Quincy and Gail, I appreciate your presentation, everything, is that you be open, right? Because there are some ideas in order to make a shift that's getting noted. And so if you should be open and
Yeah, as I said, we are considering ideas as we speak. We have monthly meetings, and that is one of the agenda items that has risen to the forefront, so to speak, that we have to address. We just don't know how we're going to address it right now. And as Dan pointed out, we have to go to our legal counsel, and they're the ones that direct us as to whether or not we can do something or not.
Let's do this. And we're open for business and open for ideas. Don't leave here if you have one. Gee, Dan, leave me with the ideas, and we'll check these out. And give us a chance. Gail, how much slides you got?
That's it, I'm done.
Great. The other thing that we hoped to accomplish today was to give you an opportunity to meet, and that's going to happen during lunch, with some folks and tell them about yourselves. Obviously, this is a process and not a destination, if you will. And I'm committed, TxDOT's committed to making it better. More opportunities and that sort of thing. Now, to do that, one part of this is ideas. Thank you for your ideas. And yes, Dan.
No, in no way this was a derogatory comment at all, because you've been doing a fantastic job, okay? And it has been, this situation has been a challenge to multiple organizations. It's a real challenge, okay? But see, what you're doing here is you're getting feedback from everybody here, and that's wonderful. That's wonderful, because I know you can handle that.
Well, Dan, I appreciate your comment and your confidence in me personally, but all kidding aside, let's remember where we started with the commission this morning. We are striving to get better every day, okay? And these ideas will help. There may be things that we haven't thought of that have been mentioned today, but this is not a destination. You guys can call me every day, and probably some of you will, and that's okay. But we're committed to getting better. Yes, sir.
Just an idea. There may be some projects, I think that there is some restriction by the law or something, but if it's possible that there is like 20 contracts or 40 contracts only for hub PPE firms, they can crunch those things. If that can be implemented, that will actually help the small business community a lot. But I don't know if there are limitations there.
All right, I don't know either, and obviously a lot of these things are governed by federal rules, regulations, and laws. I don't want to limit you to that. You'll fire something up to me. I'll get Michael to help us with what's legal and what's not. Get Gail to think, hey, Does this work for Houston? Is it not good for us, but might be good for a smaller district? We'll take it under consideration. I don't want to miss an opportunity, but there are laws and policies and other things that might regulate us, restrict us, or whatever, but we're committed to get better.